Everybody's cautiously shaking their head, yes. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Sorry, Chantel. Kaylee, roll call, please.
Chair Claren,
Here.
Vice Chair Gove,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Taylor,
Here.
Commissioner Kavanaugh is noted absent.
All right, how about if Dan leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance? You're reading again. Allegiance to the flag. Public. Indivisible, liberty, and justice. Thank you, Dan. Public comment. This is a chance for the public to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda tonight. If you have a public comment, please state your name for the record. I don't see any, so I'm going to close public comment. Code of conduct. I'm going to hand it over to Town Clerk Kelly Carpenter.
Thank you, Chair Claren. Good evening, Commission members. I'm Kelly Carpenter. I'm the Town Clerk, and I'm here to present the Code of Ethics, Conduct, and Attendance Policy for the Town of Truckee. The Code of Ethics and Conduct was recently adopted to exemplify the town's ethical conduct and values for its council and appointed committee and commission members, and to assure the public of the integrity of their local government. In drafting the current version, staff consulted with a council subcommittee consisting of council members Romack and Zabriskie for feedback and guidance. Staff also examined other codes of conduct from various cities in California for guidance on a policy that reflected the values of the town. The Code of Conduct was also discussed at the council retreat in May of 2023 for final direction. This is the first time the town has implemented a Code of Ethics and Conduct. So this is just a brief summary of a few of the pertinent ethics. Most of them are already familiar to you, but their importance is worth reiterating. I won't read it word for word, but just as you know, act in the public interest. The conduct of members should be professional, and your conduct should be above reproach. Conduct in public meetings is just be prepared, listen courteously, and focus on the issue at hand. We ask that you disclose any contacts or substantive information that you may have received that may be relevant to any matter before the commission. Disclose any, do not use your position to influence government decisions of material interest, and please disclose all financial interests. Advocate for the town's policy and positions to the best of your ability, and follow the council manager structure of government. So those are the Code of Ethics. Next, I have the Code of Conduct. And the packet that I gave you, and also that was in your agenda, outlines this in more detail. But just conduct with one another, agree to disagree. Conduct with staff, we ask that you cooperate and show respect with staff and consult the town manager for any staff-related matters. Conduct with the public, when in public meetings, treat them with respect by actively listening and maintaining an open mind. In unofficial settings, we ask that you make no promises or comments on other commission or committee members. And remember that Truckee is a small town. Disclose any information received outside of a public hearing that may have influenced your decision or your view on any matters before the commission. And if you're asked to communicate with the media, please direct all of that to the mayor, who will speak on behalf of the town. Next is our attendance policy. This was adopted at the October 10th, 2023 Town Council meeting, and it is a part of the municipal code. We modified the original municipal code to provide clarifying language as to the number of meetings missed that would automatically vacate the member's seat. So I just did a snip from the municipal code. If a board or commission member is absent from either 3 consecutive meetings of a board or commission or 1/4 of all meetings of the board or commission in a 12-month period, that member shall automatically vacate the seat on that board or commission unless otherwise directed by the council. Planning commission meets 12 times a year, so 1/4 of all meetings would be no more than 3 meetings missed over a 12-month period. And that's all I have. So I put a member statement in front of you that I like for you to sign and either return to me or you can return it to Kaylee at the end of this meeting. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Was this the Reader's Digest version?
Yes,
Thank you.
very condensed.
Any questions, anybody? Dan?
I signed.
Dave? Sammy? I think we're good.
Thank you for your time.
You want to collect these? Thank you, Kelly. Moving on, item 6, approval of the minutes. Vice Chair Gove was absent, so he must abstain. Otherwise, I could use a motion. Are there any edits or anything?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Sammy.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dan.
Chair Claren,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gove,
Abstain.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 8.1, application 2021-26. Chantel. What did I say? Chantal, like you're not?
What was that code of ethics things we just signed?
She's from the East Coast. She can handle it.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Tonight I'm here with Trailside Townhomes. This is application 2021-26, and it's a development permit, a plan development, a use permit, and a tentative map. Tonight, the Planning Commission's role is to look at whether the project has consistency with the 2025 general plan and the development code, which is kind of the standard role. Kind of unique tonight to the project is looking at whether the project design is superior to what would be developed if we used our standard application of the development code. You will see that the applicant has requested some modifications. And then review whether the design is appropriate for the steep slopes that are located on the project site. And these are just kind of a smattering of questions that could help you in your discussion if you needed help in the discussion. Does the increase in site coverage and the decrease in open space requirement allow the site to be developed at its highest density while considering the constraints of steep slopes and the requirement for the fire apparatus access? Does the project meet our hillside development standards where it can? Should the minimum density requirement be waived due to those site constraints and that kind of public health and safety fire apparatus requirement? And does allowing tandem parking enhance the site design by requiring less coverage and less site disturbance? The project is located in Tahoe Donner at 12800 Zurich Place. It's a 0.59 acre parcel in our Tahoe Donner plan area, and it is zoned RM15, multifamily residential, 15 dwelling units an acre. As you see in the resolution, part of the findings, some of the findings talk about whether or not it's compatible with the land uses in the vicinity or in land uses in the future. And the zoning map shows that it is located in a multifamily zone district, so that's all the brown. The land uses across the street are neighborhood commercial, so neighborhood serving commercial for that multifamily development. And then because we have a request for a lessened amount of open space, I thought it was helpful to show the Tahoe Donner open space that's located behind the parcel. The project is proposing 6 units in 3 duplex buildings. There's 3 about 1,400 square foot units, 2, we'll say 1,300 square foot units, and 1 larger 1,458 square foot unit. Each unit is 3 stories. It's either a 2 or 3 bedroom, and the ground story is a 1-car garage. All the units will be deed restricted to locals only, and they're for sale units, I should add. And the site is proposed to be subdivided so each unit can be located on its own parcel with a common area parcel. Here is the site plan. I know it's got a lot going on, but just a general overview. We have access being provided here on Zurich Place, and then you can kind of see each little grouping of the duplex buildings with driveways, some tandem parking, which we'll go over. And really, it's this end part when I talk about the fire apparatus access, you'll see there has to be a 3-point turn allowance for a fire truck to go down and come back out. And that is to address some of the new fire code and the fact that we're in the very high fire severity zone. So this is the general site plan. Floor plan, I say typical. Most of the units are the same. Those, as they get larger, there's one larger unit. You might have a little larger of a garage or a little larger of a living room. But generally, this is the floor plan. You see the ground floor is the 1-car garage with storage and a mudroom. Our second floor is living room, dining, kitchen with 2 decks. And the third floor will either offer a 3-bedroom option or a 2-bedroom option. Same with the elevations. The buildings look pretty similar, so I've just I've put up a sample. You'll see this is the front elevation. The materials are wood, like a dark patinaed wood, metal, weathered wood, the brownish color, kind of gray and dark earth tone colors, natural materials, and some exposed concrete on the bottom. Here are some of the renderings of the project given to us by the applicant. So the land use entitlements being requested are a development permit. This is for permitted uses with 7,500 square feet or more of floor area. Multifamily residential is a permitted use in multifamily zone district. A planned development for modifications to our development standards, and those modifications are allowing tandem parking, reducing the open space requirement from 30% to 20%, and increasing the site coverage maximum by 0.5%. Use permit is required for any non-single family development in where there are slopes in excess of 20%. And then the tentative map, as I mentioned, is to subdivide the parcel so each lot includes the condo and can be sold for ownership purposes. So we'll go into plan development. I'm planning on just kind of highlighting the unique parts of this permit. The staff report talks about general plan consistency and that other development standards are being met, but this is kind of the meat of the discussion for Planning Commission. Our plan development section allows from deviations of our development code, not deviations that include density or FAR, but deviations on development standards like setbacks, coverage, et cetera. And these deviations should provide the ability to provide a project of greater quality than if we just use the development code alone. So the first deviation that is requested is tandem parking. Tandem parking is allowed to meet off-street parking requirements for single-family dwellings, but prohibited for multifamily development. And this is because for a single-family dwelling, if someone parks behind your car, it's going to be somebody that lives in your home or a guest of your home. It's not, it doesn't provide too much of an issue. For multifamily development, not particularly this type of development, but in other ones, you could have tandem parking, it could be a different unit, it could be a guest of a different unit, and you can see the obvious issues there. For this development, because each unit is really acting like a single-family home, there's not a huge issue. Your second space would be blocking the owner space, or maybe it'd be the guest of someone there, as you can see with with the drawing. Let's go back. Wow, I really jumped ahead. The applicant's justification for the tandem parking is that it's reducing the need for additional coverage and site disturbance. It's more of an efficient use of space. We're not trying to cover more of the property with pavement for surface parking when it can be provided in front of the driveways. And each tandem spot would be part of the unit that it's parked in front of. The other two modifications kind of work together. It is an increase in site coverage and a reduction in open space. This pink drawing, as you see here, this is all of what is required for the fire apparatus access and a safe driveway according to the new fire code. So a lot of that is really, the applicant's trying to adjust that. That's using up some of the coverage that's allowable, as they're also trying to avoid some of the steeper slopes towards the rear of the property. It is a small increase in site coverage, and the open space at 10%. The open space is located to the back of the property. They weren't able to quite fit in that 30%. And the applicant has mentioned in their letter of justification that they tried moving the building orientation in different manners, and really the way they have it set up here, they're able to tuck in some of the buildings and kind of reduce that massing. The other part of a plan development is that the project needs to have a mandatory project feature, kind of a project benefit. The applicant is allowed to choose which benefit they feel that they can provide. The applicant has chosen number 3, which is that the project will achieve a minimum of 30% greater energy efficient than the minimum required by Title 24. And that is condition of approval number 25. And then moving on from the plan development request, there is a minimum density requirement that's in our development code. You'll see table 2.6 outlines, basically the minimum density is you should be providing at least 90%. Otherwise, the thought is that if you can't provide 90%, then you need to provide additional inclusionary housing, because you're not building to the density there. You're not providing the housing units that we're planning on, seeing in the community. However, there is an ability to waive this. So if there's special circumstances like environmental site constraints, such as slopes, that could preclude the construction of the minimum number of dwelling units on site, or if requiring the minimum density would be detrimental to public health and safety, so there wouldn't be an ability to put in that fire apparatus access the way fire would like, that could be another way to look at waiving it. The applicant actually would prefer to build more units and had wanted to build 7 units, and it was requiring a lot more modifications and a lot of, there wasn't enough snow storage, the parking was a problem because of the steep slopes and how they had to design it for the fire code. So it does seem that the maximum density really looks like 6, and staff is supportive of waiving that minimum density requirement. And finally, our hillside development. So the hillside development chapter asks us to look at impact and development with slopes that exceed 20% and apply different criteria where applicable. So what the applicant has proposed is, having the buildings follow the slope, minimizing the visible area of the massing, using earth tone colors and natural building materials, and terracing that retaining wall that is required for the apparatus turnaround. The project does appear to be attempting to meet as much of the density as possible while addressing those hillside issues. So in summary, the project is consistent with the general plan that is discussed in more detail in the staff report. Staff believes that with incorporation of the conditions of approval, and if the plan development is approved, the project would be consistent with our development code, and that the project is addressing the slope and attempting to apply the hillside criteria where they can. Just to highlight, we're using maybe one of the exemptions we don't use as commonly. So if you're not familiar with it, this is 15183, projects consistent with the community plan, general plan, or zoning. Because the project is not requesting additional density, it has been zoned RM15. That was looked at in a certified EIR for the 2025 general plan. And there isn't any particular or peculiar significant effects. We don't have a wetland. We don't have, major issues on the site. Staff is suggesting that we use this exemption. So staff's recommendation is to adopt resolution 2024-06, approving the following actions based on the recommended findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. Determine the project to be exempt pursuant to section 15183. Approve the development permit, approve the use permit, approve the tentative map, and approve the plan development. Of course, there are always alternatives the Planning Commission may take. You could continue the public hearing to date and time certain. You may request additional information from the applicant or staff. You could add, delete, or modify any of the conditions of approval. You could deny the project, finding that you can't make the required findings, or you could require additional environmental review. There has been no public comment received on this project. And the appeal period would end Friday, the 26th at 5 p.m. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Chantal. Mitch has suffice. I don't think there's an applicant presentation.
There's not an applicant presentation. I was under the impression there would be an applicant team member, but I'm not seeing that.
Okay, then. Clarifying questions for staff, but before we do that, I just wanted to state for the record that although I'm a Tahoe Donner Architectural Standards Committee member, I did not review this for Tahoe Donner, and this is the first time I am seeing it. So with that being said, clarifying questions for staff, anybody? Sammy?
I don't know if this is really a question for staff. I was hoping the applicant would be here so I could ask them. But I did email Chantal earlier this week about concerns over the 30% more efficient than Title 24, and how I feel, unless they can demonstrate that they can do that, you know, having done any energy modeling today, I have a feeling that that will be extremely difficult to achieve. And I wouldn't want that to then, you know, nullify the rest of the modifications that they're asking for and disqualify them from building the project. So I was hoping they would be here to discuss potential alternatives, but it doesn't seem like it. So I guess that's kind of a question, kind of a statement.
Yeah, and we did discuss this. So had someone been here, we could have maybe checked in if they had done modeling or if they felt confident or if they wanted, you know, this could be a time where if they wanted to go pick a different menu item from there that they could. Without knowing, I don't really feel comfortable changing it. There is a pathway if they end up doing the modeling or they can't do it. They could come back for a project amendment. They would have to, because this is something discussed and kind of part of the findings, they would have to come back to the Planning Commission and say, we want to do, you know, LEED Gold, or we want to do, you know, public art, you know, something towards the public. But yeah, without that, I don't know how. Yeah, I think we might just have to continue on with what they requested.
Okay, well, as long as there's like another way that they can kind of course correct, that's fine. Thank you.
They don't do a modeling before?
No, they do a modeling. They have to do modeling before they get the building permit issued, and then they have to have compliance. They have to show compliance once it's built. My thought is that it's expensive and they don't know if things are going to change prior to, you know, I mean, this is more conceptual, right, at the Planning Commission, at the land use entitlement level. I kind of have to hope that if you know, your engineer and if you chose this, then you have an idea that you can complete it. But, you know.
There's no permit without a modeling first.
Yes, there's no permit. There's no permit being issued without them showing, an energy consultant shows modeling that it's possible. And that is one of the conditions of approval.
Who reviews that on the town side? Or does it just go to the engineer and say, model this at 30? I mean, because 30% greater than Title 24 is a little bit nebulous, what that even means. You know, because when you get your Title 24, there's just a bunch of boxes you check in the software.
Yeah, usually our plan checkers will look at that. So right now, Kim Dobble's still our sort of resident expert for that. But you're right, there's a lot of box checking, and so there's a lot of good faith effort on the part of the designer who's doing it to demonstrate that they've done the work. So it's really a spot check level of review on our side.
Is it even achievable?
Well, again, I wonder if in the CalCert software, when they do their initial permit, you just click a button that's like exceed by 30%, and they just got to click more boxes of doing the QII, doing higher quality insulation, doing heat pumps, doing solar panels, doing battery walls.
30%?
30%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I don't know.
30% on top of what it is insanely hard to just get it done now.
I mean, it would be the hardest, like, you would need triple pane windows. You would need the highest R value insulation, all walls. You would probably also need like passive solar, which the site's not oriented to
Right.
have. I mean, it would require solar because they're low-rise multifamily. I don't know if it's possible, but you can't, that doesn't go
don't know
towards
if
your
that's
efficiency
Battery
calcs
walls, yeah,
anymore.
it'd be very hard to do.
I don't know if that site would be appropriate for solar at all with the shading. It's north aspect, right? Downslope? With a ton of trees. Yeah,
And so if they can't do that,
they can't get a building
it's
permit.
come back here and build a really badass piece of art.
Made out of energy.
I mean, there are other options. They could deed restrict for affordability. They could, there are 4 options, but it is understood that especially talking
I
with
thought they
commission-
already are deed restricting.
they're deed restricting to locals only, so not deed restricting to affordability. So there's no affordability aspect. It is, I have the exact wording in the condition, but it's at least one person works over 30 hours.
Yeah, I read
Yeah,
that.
so,
But it's just, and it's a for sale product.
yes.
But it's not income restricted.
It's not income restricted, no.
So they're 2 million.
They'll be paying the in lieu fee.
Anyways. Okay, so what happens, I'm kind of getting into deliberation, but we're talking about this 30% choice. What happens when they realize that may be challenging and they want to come back and change that?
They would submit a project amendment,
Does it come back
and it
to
would come
us?
back to you, yes, because it's not something that the director could approve, because it's something deliberated by the planning commission.
Got it.
Yep,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Sounds like it makes it easy for us because whether we say yes or no, the onus is on them to
Yeah, that's what I
check
was
the box
checking.
they already checked or meet the obligation.
Make it happen.
I have
Do you
no
wanna-
staff questions.
Okay, thank you. You do, Dave?
No, I don't.
Oh,
No, I'm good.
all right. Well, then I was going to say, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Don't rush the podium, please. Deliberation. Nothing? Sammy, got anything?
We've kind of already been talking about it, but I just don't know the best way to proceed knowing that they're just going to come back to us anyway. Most likely. I don't know that for certain. I can't say that.
So, I mean, you could continue, because no one's here, you could continue it and, continue it to ask a question of the applicant. I'm not saying that that's I guess that's your level of comfort with it.
I mean, I think if you're looking for some flexibility, the other thing you could consider is opening up a little bit wider under the mandatory project features for plan development. So right now they've selected number 3, which is the 30% greater energy efficiency, but we had kind of internally talked about, number 4, which says the project will provide a substantial public amenity beyond that otherwise required.
Can you pull that up so we're looking at it?
Yeah. That way you can look at all 4 of them. So that could be something your commission could talk about too, of whether you want to maybe modify the condition a little bit to increase some flexibility for what could be looked at as far as meeting the mandatory project feature requirements.
Can we approve, or if we approved, and basically say staff level of approval for any one of these 4 conditions? If they come back and say, hey, we decided we can't meet this, we're going to deed restrict, we're going to provide a substantial public amenity, or go for LEED Gold, is that something that could be approved or reviewed at staff level?
We could, other than number 4, is a little bit vague, I would say, in just what constitutes a public amenity, because the examples they provide are a significant public plaza or park or trail. Those are things that often require town council consideration. The one example I have is the Kelly Brothers building out off of Pioneer Trail, that they did public art. So there's another section of the development code that kind of talks about public art valued at 1% of the value of the construction project. So we have used that as an example of something that's a substantial public amenity, but they actually put the art in where I'm not sure this is an expertise of this particular developer, but that is an example. So maybe if you talk about that one in particular, come up with maybe some parameters that would be easier for staff to understand what your expectations of that would be.
Is that offsite? Public art or plaza or?
Yeah, the Kelly Brothers one actually did the bike art downtown. That's, I forget what we call the plaza, one that has like the checkerboard in between Stephanie Olivieri's building and the Flying A. So the pretty prominent bike art that's there.
So they showed a lawn on the project. What is that about? Like, why is it there?
They were attempting to have some residential open space. So we have the open space requirement, which is just 30% of the site. And then the multifamily standards have like an open space requirement per unit. And I think that they were hoping to use that area. Whether or not the Wheelo and the landscaping would check out, I mean, they might need to be natural and not a lawn.
Yeah.
yeah,
'Cause the amount of water and chemicals grass needs to grow is sickening. It's really not that healthy if we're trying to be semi-environmental.
There's a condition of approval for a final landscaping plan, and they would have to meet all of the low water and drought. So we often let project, it's kind of draft at this point, but when they come in for a building permit, they would have to meet our final landscaping plan requirements.
And it seems to me that clear cutting the entire lot, is that correct?
I would say that whole part of development up until,
Can you pull the site
Well,
plan
the
up
way
again?
they changed the topo lines, it's the whole lot.
yeah, it's, no, I don't think, let's see, let's get back to the site plan.
There's a grading plan somewhere.
Yeah.
Look at the upper right corner. I mean, that's all new topo lines.
Yeah, that's they're addressing the fire apparatus turnaround requirement.
I had a few comments, typos mostly on the resolution. Can we pull that up?
Sure.
And then Tahoe Donner approved this, I'm assuming, since I didn't go to any of the meetings.
This is a 2021 project, so it's been kind of going around for a while. But the last emails I saw from Tahoe Donner, it looked like they were going to be in approval as long as they saw that the town was approving the additional site coverage. They wanted proof that we were doing that. I'm not sure where they are in that process, but they've been reviewing it. I don't know if you've seen it recently.
I
You said
haven't
you
seen
haven't seen it. Give me a moment to get the resolution up, please.
And then you don't know if they were going to get HOA amenities with that, I'm assuming. You don't know?
I think they were planning on doing that. At one time, they were looking at an affordability, one of the units being affordable, and they were asking about how the HOA cost plays into determining affordability. So I believe the plan was to be part of the HOA.
No reason, actually. Just curious. And then
And I'm sorry.
while Chantal is looking, there was, all right, number 13 I have down. Let me see, I have a question about it. Oh, Nevada County Department of Environmental Health, there's no septic or anything, so why are they on that list?
This is a standard condition of approval that goes in every project.
So they have to look at it even though they don't have anything to do with it?
So it would be when they come in for the building permits, it gets routed to everybody and they will just say, no comment. But it does get routed as part of our building permit process
So that's just the default, everybody's got
Yep.
to do that whether they are needed or not.
Exactly.
Number 40? So right at the end, the last sentence, the applicant shall pay affordable housing in lieu fee and hourly staff free.
Ooh. We don't want fees to be free.
No. Number 43. And not short-term rentals, I think you're supposed to be in no short-term. Since Coral's not here, I thought I... And then, it's a side note, but I'm gonna bring it up anyway. Number 44 talks about temporary certificates of occupancy, and I was under the impression that Mike Ross said no more temporary certificates. So why would it be in there?
It's a standard condition of approval again, but you're right, we should change that. And I was actually working on a different project and was removing that in our notes. Because we move these over when we're looking at a building permit and we copy our conditions of approval, and I was realizing that. So staff can go ahead and change our standard conditions of approval.
Not that I agree with that, because I think we should have temp certs, but if we don't, we shouldn't be giving false hope.
Yeah.
My only other comment that was, if you looked at Chantal's presentation, the neighbor to the right built all their buildings right in the steepest part of the lot. I
Yes.
found that interesting.
I believe that was before our time, or before the incorporation of the town of Truckee.
Oh, got it. That's all I have. Anybody else? Deliberation? Want to make a motion? Want to make that record, Sammy?
So we were talking about, do we need to talk about
Number
giving some language,
25.
yeah, in that condition of approval 25 to have some flexibility for the applicant to manage that process at the staff level instead of having to come back should they realize they probably can't do 30% greater than Title 24 requirements?
On that first item about the 25% deed restricted, would they then deed restrict 2 units? Or would it be 1 plus an added in lieu fee, or?
I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I'm not feeling that would be a chosen. What would the calculation be? Oh,
Yeah, if the applicant wanted, what would you do? What would your
minimum
response be?
25. It would be 25% of the 6, and then would it be an in lieu fee for but they already paid the in lieu fee, so.
I mean, we could.
So I think the question.
I think you would get a credit back. I mean, I don't think we've done it after the fact. So usually you would have, had they done 25%, we would have done 25% of the units and the in lieu fee. But right now they're supposed to pay the whole in lieu fee, or the 0.9%, 90% of the in lieu fee. So if they change that, we would have to go back and just change the calculations to make sure.
So 25% of 6 is 1.5. So how do you make a half a unit?
I would go with the assumption we would do
That's the
the in lieu
question.
fee because we allow that for our code allows that for fractional units. So if let's just say the 15% came out to 1.6, you have to build one, and then you have the choice of either building a second one or paying 0.6 of the in lieu fee.
So this would be 0.5 of an in lieu fee.
So it would be, any fractional amount is at the discretion of the developer per the development code.
Got it. And that was what, number 1 on the,
Oh, yeah, it was up a second ago. This is the worst mouse ever. Let's go.
so if we modified the resolution to say one of the 4 is okay, does that work for staff?
I mean, you could. I think our concern is particularly with number 4 because it's pretty open-ended. So if you had some bookends for that, that would be a little bit easier. I think in Chantal's working with the applicant team, they're not going to pick number 1 because that's been an ongoing discussion with them since the project's come in. Not sure about number 2. So number 4 feels like it could be feasible, but again, we don't have any projects identified. They could potentially come up with something, but do you want that at my discretion and deciding if it's substantial enough of a public benefit, or do you want to put some parameters around that?
How hard would it be to achieve number 2?
I have a question on number 2. Is it full certification or meeting the criteria but not being certified?
I believe it's full certification. I just kind of shortened it from the development code, but it does say gold or similar certification. So I'm not aware if there's something similar to gold, but it does say certification.
In my experience, that would probably be doable for them, but it would just cost money.
Well,
So 30% greater.
That's going to cost
Yeah, I
more.
don't know
money.
which one would be
I mean, I would, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, how much more are triple glazed windows?
Yeah, I kind of feel like
lot.
you're probably not too far away from a LEED Gold rating just with California standards.
On item number 4, is that like identified as a percentage of the project cost or some way quantified? I mean, it sounds like for Kelly Brothers to put in the bike downtown, that seems like a pretty easy way to meet your public benefit.
So the challenge is usually the developer proposes something and then it comes to the review authority to consider it in the context of what they're asking for sort of in exchange. And you don't have that benefit right now. So that's where it becomes difficult, whether it's you as the commissioner or me as the director, in deciding what constitutes a substantial public benefit. The Kelly Brothers one was a little bit more clear because the type of project that they had an allowance for them to use public art as a public benefit. I think we could make that connection and say that there's a precedent that we've used that for another project. Theirs, granted, was a commercial project, but there is a lot of interest in art in the community, and we don't have substantial funding allocated right now to be able to do additional public art projects. So that could be an option.
Any idea what that number was then for that project?
Honestly, off the top of my head, I want to say it was less than $20,000. But in part because they already had people who could do the work. So they weren't going out and hiring someone to do the work on their behalf.
If we modified the resolution to say one of the 4 and up to the zoning administrator to either make the call or send it back to planning commission.
So you would want it to go to zone, like a public
I'm
hearing?
just making a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, you can either have it to me as director, so that's staff level review. Anything I take action on is appealable, or you can have it be more formalized with me as the zoning administrator where we're noticing and it's part of a public hearing, just to provide that opportunity for other people to weigh in, but not have it at your level.
Could you make the decision like you feel it should go back to the commission regardless and just send it back?
Yeah, I can always elevate to you.
Okay. So, Dave, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm just wondering why we're trying to do all this gymnastics, you know, if they were happy with thinking they could make this 30%, you know.
I'm only doing it for you guys. If it's up to me, I'd approve it the way they wanted it. And
Yeah,
if they don't make it, then they got to come back.
Let's just do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at least,
I
vote,
see
at least
it.
vote on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they made the decision.
Yeah.
We're all adults, theoretically.
I'd like to make a motion.
We have the resolution. Thanks.
Okay, motion that we adopt Resolution 2024-06, approving the following actions based on the recommended findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. Determining the project to be exempt from further environmental review pursuant to Section 15183 of the California Environmental Quality Act. Approve the development permit. 3, approve the use permit. 4, approve the tentative map. And 5, approve the planned development.
I'll second that.
For that, does that include Chair Claren's minor modifications that he had presented during?
Including Chair Claren's minor modifications.
Any other deliberation or discussion? Roll call, please.
Chair Claren,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gove,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Staff reports.
Don't have any staff reports, but we can do informational items.
Information items.
Great. Same. So usually what we do is we cover sort of what we anticipate to be on the next month's agenda. So as of today, we have the Silver Creek Housing Project, which is a 40-unit multifamily project that Chantal has been working on. And we just had a lively neighborhood meeting via Zoom with 58 of the neighbors that participated.
What neighborhood is that in?
It's part of Winter Creek, so it
It's
was
just a 4-unit?
Yeah, I know. 40.
40.
Oh, 40.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell them that information?
Go ahead.
As part of that, there is in our major development projects on the website, the recorded meeting and some information is available there. If, you'll be seeing the official information, but that's available for public viewing.
I'm
Yeah.
guessing there was some neighborhood opposition to that.
It's definitely an interesting project because originally it was all one developer, and then this section, which was designated for multifamily, also got parceled off, and now it's a different developer. And so, how those two sites work together is something that's still being kind of worked through as part of the process.
And we'll be talking about density with state housing laws and state density bonus. So that was kind of our original intent of having the meeting with the neighborhoods is to get their concerns, but to also be able to daylight, what the rules are, how things have changed, and kind of what our purview is on that project.
So that's one. And then we have an appeal of an SB 9 application that we had processed. So Luke is working on that one. And then also potentially building K4 in Pioneer Commerce Center, which is Ciro Mancuso's unpermitted boat storage building. And I will just say that there's some complexity with that one. So, and then the last one is a possible presentation by Laura and Yumi and Chantal on where we're at with some of our development code amendments for general plan consistency. So we're focusing on the corridor mixed use areas and also the neighborhood commercial areas. So we're trying to break down the changes that we need to do in the development code to meet some of our new language in the 2040 general plan. But before we get sort of in the weeds, we thought maybe we'd give you a presentation on what we've been working on so that it might be a little bit more of a kind of open study session with the commission so that we're not, so locked down on all the words and everything else before you've had an opportunity to kind of have some discussion about it. So we're going to try this as a new format and see how that goes. And if it's something that you like, we'll try and do that again as we bring these forward. I will say we're going to start getting into a bit of a time crunch here because the state's really starting to mandate that we update our code to meet our general plan language. And that gap of time is narrowing. So we're going to start speeding these up a little bit. But we think just for the first one, this will be a good approach.
Bring it on.
Okay.
Hey,
And then-
SB 9,
Yes.
is that density bonuses?
No, it's an allowance the state has for being able to split your lot. And there's some criteria in there where essentially you could create 4 units, but it has to be owner occupied. And
Right.
there's some other things. And so this is just one where we have very specific standards in the development code that say, here's your height requirements, here's your setbacks, all those things. And this application doesn't meet those standards.
So the applicant is appealing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you, do we have any idea of the status of the housing project that's going in at the old CHP shop?
I believe that's also a project that I've been kind of working with. They're going through different funding rounds. I don't believe it's been fully funded. They are moving forward with what's that? I think it's the 9% tax credit round. They are moving forward with the lot line adjustment that we're processing that they need to do because there's a small little parcel. But and we've done some pre-review. As you know, we don't really have an ability, it's not within our jurisdiction, so we're not doing a standard development permit where we all can talk about it, but we are trying to provide comments to, how it could get closer to meeting our standards, and we've been working with them on that.
Yeah, and most recently, we've had discussion with their project team about the town doing, so we'll do some of the plan review and also the inspections, but it's all advisory, which is unusual because usually the state architect's office would take that over. Oftentimes if they're busy, they'll ask the local jurisdiction to do it, but ultimately we don't have the authority because it's a state project, but we'll do it in a form of making advisory notes, recommendations for them, saying this is what would be consistent with the code. So it's a little unusual, but so we've had those discussions. But until they get their funding complete, they've got to work on that first.
And then any idea on what status is for Soaring Phase 2?
I think they were coming in for a project amendment for that. Laura was working on that one with them. Originally, they had talked about not doing one of the buildings, and so I think they were kind of re-looking at that, but I think that's where we're at with that one.
Thank you.
Danielle, did you have anything else? I think we cut you off.
No, the only other thing was just to remind you that the ethics training's coming up, but not until July 18th. So just kind of keep that on your radar. Kelly will send multiple reminders about that over time. But if you haven't done it in the last 2 years, it's a requirement.
That wasn't what we did today.
No, that was your code of ethics. It's very different.
I want to thank Scott for being here today.
You're welcome.
Commission member reports. Then I'm going to adjourn to the next meeting of the Planning Commission, which is May 21st, 2024, right here at Town Hall at 5 p.m. I don't want to scare Chantal this time.